Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Anyekolo. Now, since the onset of the COVID pandemic, about 1.6 billion young people have had their education badly disrupted. It's increased the disparities in education, with girls, those living in poor or rural areas, the disabled, and refugees among those whose learning opportunities have been further reduced. So, to come up with effective post-COVID-19 education solutions, world leaders in education, including UNICEF, UNESCO, ministers and officials from 40 countries, together with specialist NGOs in the field of education, have been meeting virtually to help set in motion far-reaching changes to education in the wake of the coronavirus. Key drivers include former UK Prime Minister Gordon Brown, now the UN Special Envoy for Global Education, and former Australian Prime Minister Julia Gillard, who for 6 years has been chair of the leading NGO Global Partnership for Education. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now via Cisco WebEx by the Director of UNESCO's Multi-Sectoral Office in Nairobi for East Africa, and Therese Ndong. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. First of all, set out for us briefly the disruptive impact that COVID-19 has had on education and who has been worst affected.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to the issues arising from the COVID pandemic. Essentially, in Africa, every country was affected, is still affected. Over 300 million learners from early childhood right through higher education disrupted. Learning was disrupted, and worst of all are those in communities, like you have mentioned, persons with disability, girls. And so therefore, in the response from Ministry of Education, much as made the effort, learning continued, less than 20%. If we're able to reach learners. It was a time where, like every other sector, the education sector was unprepared. It exposed the weak infrastructure of the education system, and the fact that teachers, even with the technologies that were introduced, teachers were not prepared. So really, it was, in the true sense, very disruptive to learner, to the education system.
And so this virtual conference that attracted so many important people, I've been seeing pictures of Gordon Brown, the former British Prime Minister there, who's always taken education very seriously. It attracted a lot of very important people, was taking place to set in motion changes to education after COVID-19. I mean, tell us more about that.
Well, actually, I mean, as has been the case with so many conferences on education, there are always great ideas of what can be done, but the truth remains that investment to make it happen has always fallen short. And yes, there is whole things, causes the inequality, equal access, but it has also provided opportunities using technology. However, here comes the challenge. With technology and given the investment that's required, given the training that we're looking at, we cannot really guarantee that these huge investments, billions of dollars, would be made available to the education system in the way we anticipate. So yes, it's a call for mobilization of huge resources, but even with the best intention, we know that with a weak infrastructure in most of our African countries, we have to look at alternatives that would not be altogether high-tech, but low-tech, and blended approaches that would ensure that teachers are prepared for future pandemics to engage students while still at home. And I believe this is a conversation similar to what we've had before, but like since a very long time, once the donors and the big players make the promises, the pledges are never realized, and we are always in a situation of inequality, unequal access, poor learning condition, especially for the poor. Those who benefit continue to be the private schools, the private sector, and the cities, but not in the rural communities, not in the areas where you have refugees. But we hope that with COVID would come new opportunities to address inequalities and access for all.
Well, in terms of making progress, following that sort of virtual conference, I'm looking at a press release from Gordon Brown suggesting that there been some funding which is aimed at speeding up connecting every school in the world to the net to prevent the kind of disruption that took place. And I think the key to what you guys are trying to do with UNESCO and UNICEF and this virtual conference is internet connectivity and distance learning.
Yeah, internet connectivity and distance learning, yes, true, but and that's why I made the reference to the weak infrastructure, because connecting every school requires that you already have the underground cable. It means that you have the right satellites really beaming in some of these rural communities. It also requires that there will be huge investment on energy, using alternative energy. So yes, these, as I said, are possibilities we are looking at, but even the reality on the ground, talking to different governments, is that they are far from ready. It will require billions of dollars. So therefore, what I'm saying is we will continue to have distance learning, but it may not necessarily be 100% internet-based. You have ITU and UNICEF already starting the effort of connecting every school, but it's just how far it can go. Where you have rural communities that do not have electricity, they do not have internet access, we are looking at offline solutions. And for me, if really there would be a true opportunity to reach the unreached, to reach the poor, children with disability, the refugees, we need to look at, and this is also on the table, offline solutions where we would not really rely heavily on internet. It would be, as it were, you know, a briefcase kind of solution, going from school to school, connecting campuses and the rest of it, using digital libraries, but it would not really be one for which we can reach 100% access as is envisaged, because the volume of resources that will be required is not really readily available. That's what I would say. Yes, it's a conversation, and distance learning is on the table. We have to look at it, but it is looking at what medium and how it can be made possible that we would then be able to realize this dream of distance learning using technology, using the internet going forward.
Well, I mean, talking about technology, apologies for saying this, but I mean, your internet was pretty, or is pretty horrendous from that part of the world where you are. I think you're in Nairobi or Gambia or something to that effect. I apologize for that, but, and I apologize to our viewers, of course, but you had a lot of very important things to say, and we appreciate your joining us. And Teresa Ndung is UNESCO's multi-sectoral office director in Nairobi for East Africa. That's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.